Hey everybody, welcome back. It's another In Conversation with Tony Tone with MPW TV. And what an honor it is to have a very special guest with us today. Fitz with Fitz and The Tantrums. They're going to be playing a show on January 29th, Riverside Casino and Golf Resort. And the good news is there's a few tickets that still remain at riversidecasinoandresort.com. Fitz, thanks for taking the time, man. It's great to see you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So you've got a new album, Man on the Moon. And I feel like as I've been listening to it, I know it came out in July of 2025, which is so weird to say last year because we're just into the
I
new
know.
year. But for me, it gives kind of like a cosmic vibe. If you could send one of the tracks off of Man on the Moon into space as a message for another civilization that I think is out there, what song would you send out and why?
That's a good question. I mean, it's so tough when you make a record,
Mhm.
most records I'm writing 40, 50. I mean, I've written sometimes 100 songs for a record before to get those special songs. You don't write a special song every time. And so when we get to the final songs that make the album, those are my babies. Those are the ones that didn't get thrown out along the wayside over the course of a year and a half making the records. So when it comes down to picking the one, it's tough because I love them all and I'm so proud of this record the way it turned out. It really was. I feels like maybe our best record ever, but I'd have to maybe put Man on the Moon. It's interstellar.
Yeah,
So,
it's
or
a
you're
great
supposed
track.
to get interstellar, however you interpret
Yeah,
it.
I really like, so the whole album is good, but Oh Maria has been one I've been going back to.
I love that song.
Umbrella, Queen of Hearts. And I think what's been nice is because I'm the type of person, so I worked in radio for 12 years. So and we're going to the show, July 29th, Fits in the Tantrums, Riverside Casino. I like to look at set lists. And I do feel like your set lists have done a good job of including several new tracks, but just give me the process about putting that set list together. Obviously, you want people to listen to things like the Man on the Moon record and the songs. You know that you've got monster hits, which we'll touch on in a little bit. But what type of thought goes into that set list for Fits and the Tantrums?
Yeah, I mean, the longer you go, the more, I mean, we're on 6 albums. It's a lot of records.
Yeah.
I mean, in a certain way, it's like you get to cherry pick every best song from every album that you've also road tested for years to know. Obviously you have your big hit songs and then you have your album cuts. And then some of those album cuts you see they don't translate as well, or they translate better than you could have ever imagined.
Yeah.
So, 17, 18 years in, it's pretty incredible now. We can just make the fiercest set of just all killer, no filler, just punching you in the face with one great song after the other. We try and sprinkle, obviously, some of the new songs.
Mhm.
In this day and age of attention is so hard. It feels like you said that the record came out in July last year, but in this day and age of how much content we consume, it almost feels like it came out 3 years ago. So one of the great ways that we can really keep reintroducing people to the record is to play those songs live. So we're giving them, all the way back to the first album, and we're trying to cherry pick our favorite songs from every record and just really try and give them, an experience that is undeniable. And hopefully, we've picked it, and we'll play a couple of those songs, and then a couple were like, that one didn't really go off as well as I did. I don't want the audience to look bored for 1 second. So you're like, all right, take that one out. Let's try this one. But we've been doing it for so long too. We kind of have a good idea of which ones are going to pop off live. I'm glad you mentioned Umbrella. That's one of my favorite songs. As far as like a pure pop song,
Sure.
that's the biggest punch in the face of the whole record. And I love singing it. And it has the highest note. It's like a C sharp
Wow.
above C that I have to sing, and I can't usually hit that note except for like once a year. And somehow I'm just so into doing it, I nail it every night. It's a point of pride for me.
And you said you were saving that note for sure, January 29th, Riverside Casino. You're like, I got to bring it to Riverside, Iowa, the
Of
future home.
course.
By the way, the future home of James P. Kirk. I don't know if you're a Star Trek fan, but that's where he was set to be from in
Oh,
Riverside.
is that where he goes to retire and ride off into the
Yeah,
sunset?
sort of. They do have like a, I don't know, a museum for him. I'm not the biggest Trekkie, but I do appreciate kind of the Iowa lore. Um, let's stick with the music. So when you think about kind of how things have maybe changed or evolved over the years and the records, do you feel like there's been a musical risk that you or the band took that maybe felt scary at the time, but really helped, whether it was to define the identity of Fitz and the Tantrums or was something new or different?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our very first album, picking up the pieces, was a very Motown, Blue Eyed Soul, H2O, Hall and Oates vibes for
Mhm.
days. And that album put us on the map, broke us at AAA radio, and made us into a national touring band. And then we went I mean, we toured our butts off for 2.5 years, almost 3 years straight off that first record,
Mhm.
and then finished an exhausting run and took 3 days off and went and wrote the second album. And that second album, I really didn't want to make another retro soul album. Um, and I was trying to lean in on maybe my biggest influence of all time, which is 80s new wave, new romantic.
Mhm.
That's like the music that most influenced me. And I really wanted to get that incorporated into the next record. And I was also sort of tired because people were sort of defining a band like, oh yeah, they're retro throwback. But it
Mhm.
almost felt like dismissive. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna show you. And we went and made a much more alternative, new wave, poppier record.
Mhm.
And that was a big risk. I mean, we had the label, we had management, I had people within the band. Everybody was doubting the decision.
Mhm.
They said, oh, you can't do that. And, we put that record out and we got a lot of angry fans from it. You know,
Wow.
I think invariably you'll find out very quickly as a band that you can never satisfy everybody. If you make the same record, people just say, "Oh, they're boring. They just made the same record again." If you do something different, they're mad at you for doing something different. And so I just had to have this ultimate belief that I knew that Out of My League was going to be the song that took us to a whole different level.
Mhm.
It touched on every 80s influence that I loved. And you being a radio guy, like I was counting on the fact that every PD across an MD across America
Yeah.
was probably somewhere near my age range. And when they heard that song, it was just gonna tickle every pastiche, like retro memory that they had. And it turned out to be exactly that. And it was the longest run up to number one in alternative radio history, something like 36 weeks to get
Wow.
there. And, we lost some fans. And some of them stuck with us and then went on the journey. And every record we've tried to do that and have an evolution. And we paid the price for it with losing some of our fan base, but at the same time, we were able to actually gain more fans to make up for that difference and keep going. And then the same thing and when we put that record out, people are like, oh, they're jumping on the new wave bandwagon. I was like, excuse me, new wave bandwagon. I was like, I am new
You
wave.
are new wave.
Like,
Yeah.
you're
Right.
not going to get more new wave. I was a teenager in the 80s. Like, so don't tell me that I'm jumping on a bandwagon here.
Yeah.
And then when we made HandClap, that was an even bigger, poppier swing. That was an in your face song. And that song, the
Mhm.
second it came out, Spotify, was streaming a million a day almost.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa, something's happening here. People were mad at us that it wasn't the same record as Out of My League. And that's why I realized, oh, you're just never going to make anybody happy. And you just have to have a belief and faith in yourself and what you want to do.
And it's so interesting because I feel like you can, I mean, I for one can appreciate just the differences between like a money grabber to out of my league to a hand clap to what you've just, I mean, most recently the Radio Baby single from October of last year. To me, that's just like being like a person. A band is like a person to me. Like we grow, our tastes change. But if you're a fan of artists and folks like yourself, it's like you should just, in my opinion, you should just be along for the ride. And not everything is going to land with you all the time, but at least you can appreciate chances and just what you're saying is you want to be able to create, but then also you've got the pressures and the expectations from labels, and I don't know and I don't want to understand those, but I can appreciate that journey of what you guys have done, and I think that's a well-rounded approach, and that's why you've endured the success that you've had and why you're going to have a great turnout next week at Riverside Casino. What about some unwritten rules with touring and recording? And maybe this is just self-service for me, kind of a nerdy thing. Are there any Fits in the Tantrum laws that newcomers to your team learn quickly, or things that you're just like, we're going to do this when we're out or when we're in the process of getting into the studio? Anything you'd want to share on that?
Trying to think. I mean, live, I'm very much consistent. Like once we find the right evolution of the right balance of songs for energy, give them a breath, go high, go low. Once we kind of dial that in, I'm pretty um adamant that we stick to it, even to sometimes the band's chagrin when they want to change it up. And I'm like, no, we're going to give these people this consistent show. We've dialed it in. It's great. We don't need to change it because we're bored. The audience did not see us for the last 4 nights in a row. Let's do that. And, we'll throw in some songs every once in a while. I like to sometimes just like call a song 2 minutes before show and make everyone get on there, get a little nervous because it just makes everyone, it's really easy when you're doing the same thing every night to sort of like let your mind drift. So it's always good to kind of put in one sort of heart attack moment for everybody to keep on.
In that same vein, your shows often a lot of audience participation. Have there been instances where the crowd has done something that forced you and the band to pivot, improvise, or rethink things, good or bad, whatever you want to share? But and I know that
Yeah,
the
I
crowd at
think
Riverside is
I
going to be
mean,
great. Yeah.
absolutely. There's been times where we're playing, and sometimes you're playing a festival or a town city walk or whatever, and so you might have a lot of people that are not necessarily your fans mixed in with your fans. So you have to be able to read the crowd. And I was like, oh, this crowd is sort of like I can see they're on their fence. Let's not play this slower deep cut songs. Let's do one of the bigger songs, or we have a couple covers in our back pocket that we've done an amazing cover of Sweet Dreams for years. We used to do Steady as She Goes by the Raconteurs. We have a couple that we can break out that sometimes will break the ice for some of those newbies, and then they seem to be a little more open and receptive, and then you sneak in one of yours and you bring them into the fold. And 18 years later, we're still of the mindset that every show we play, we're trying to collect new fans.
Absolutely. And you're going to see that, I think, next week, January 29th, Riverside Casino, Riverside Casino and resort.com for tickets for Fits in the Tantrums. Just a few more questions and then I'll let you
Yeah,
go
no worries.
because you are a busy man. A lot of your songs, in my opinion, can walk that line between vulnerability and celebration. Is there a track in your catalog that took on a completely new meaning for you, Fitz, after performing it live, or just that has, I don't want to say grown on you because they're all kind of, I don't know if you perceive them like your kids or whatever, but is there one or two that come to mind that you're like, wow, I didn't think at the time that particular track was gonna do that for me?
Yeah, I mean, I think wherever you are in your life, you're on stage putting your heart and soul into it and singing for people. And those different messages evolve and become different things to you based on what's going on in your life. We have a song from 3 albums ago called I Need Help.
Mm,
Um, and it's just sort of, I think especially for stoic men of the world, that weren't necessarily taught to ask for help or to be vulnerable. That song really, when we started playing it live, I could see the connection with people that it was having, but I realized in myself the emotion and how much I think I, or as me as a male or me as an individual, sometimes am just trying to be so self-reliant.
mm,
And how much easier and how much relief there can be from leaning on your community, your friends, your family, and being vulnerable and asking for help in those situations. And then to see that message translate to other people and seeing the emotion or the power that that has for people as they're looking back at you, seeing it with their whole heart, and you really realize that there's no way that you can take that moment lightly.
yeah, and it's so I was looking at All the Feels, which is the album you're referencing, 2019, and just looking at the track listings that lead up to I Need Help. I Just Want to Shine is the third track. Ain't Nobody But Me is the fourth, and then I Need Help, followed by Don't Ever Let 'Em. And that album for sure is, and as someone that's personally been on a journey of trying to understand emotions, both for myself and my family and my kids, I totally resonate with what you said. One of the questions I want to ask you is like, what are you listening to? But how does that feel knowing, and you spoke to it a little bit, but just knowing that things that you in the band create can resonate with people. You reference seeing it from the stage, which is an awesome perspective and to think about. But does that empower you when you're maybe facing like a writer's block, or just talk about that, because that's not an emotion that most people get to experience, is creating something and then being able to see it in live time.
Oh, certainly. I don't think I had any real concept of that moment.
Mhm.
You make a record, you make a song in your studio, in your bedroom, or wherever. You make it for yourself, and then you put it out into the world. And then you really realize that once you put it out in the world, it's not yours any longer.
Mm,
Um, and we've just had so many experiences touring as a band that um, have just shown me that power,
mm,
where somebody will come up to me after a show. We used to, for years and years, we would do the whole show and then we would come out and sell merch and sign autographs. And sometimes the show would be an hour and a half and the signing would be 2.5 hours. And we did that for 6, 7, 8 years, to the point where it was just, I couldn't do it vocally anymore because speaking is the worst thing for you as a vocalist, and it was just too taxing. The line just was getting longer and longer and longer. But people coming up and just saying something as simple as, I just want you to know that I just had the worst year of my life, and this album or this song was my, like, get up off your ass, stop being a saddy, and go conquer the world. Or we have somebody sends us a message, says, hey, our daughter just finished up chemotherapy treatment. She had stage 3 cancer.
mhm,
Your song, HandClap, was her fight song every day during treatment. And it's still, I've told the story so many times, but it makes me still shook emotionally to the
mm,
core, because they wrote us that letter and we said, and it was in somewhere in Texas. And then I said, of course. So almost everybody in the band is a parent.
mhm,
We come out, we meet this little girl
mhm,
who's now recovered.
mhm,
Her parents are sitting there, and the power of what that daughter felt and expressed to us in saying, like, this song was just motivated me every day to get through chemo. And then to look at the parents who are just mouthing to us like, thank you,
Mm.
as like all five dudes in the band are just weeping
Mm.
because we all have kids and this moment is so real,
Yeah.
and it just was like, wow. Not that I think that what I write is that amazing or that important, but I'm going to respect and acknowledge that moment where you put something out in the world and people take it and they ascribe meaning or hope or whatever it is. And that moment was just so powerful. You read a lot of the song titles from the All the Feels record. So much of that comes from that experience where I'm like, holy crap, this is so powerful. I want to keep putting out
Hmm.
powerful messages to
Yeah,
people.
and
Messages of hope, of courage, of overcoming adversity, of dealing with anxiety, stress, all these things. I want to keep leaning towards that. And I don't care if some people say our music's a little too cheesy or too like rah rah or feel good. I don't care because, I will sit there every night from stage and see somebody singing back to me, and I can tell this song is the most friggin' important song
yeah,
of the last year to them. It meant something to them on a profoundly human level that you have to be humbled by and respect that moment because it is so powerful.
I love it. It's such a great answer, and that definitely continues and is echoed in the latest release, "Man on the Moon." Two quickies, and then we'll get you out of here again. Fitz in the Tantrum, January 29th, Riverside Casino. Tickets at riversidecasinoandresort.com. In the same vein of what we were just talking about, if it's Fitz going back in a time machine to where you're at a show, what songs impacted you so profoundly? And then what are you listening to now? And I don't know if you're able to do that with being a professional musician that's creating and producing and touring. If you're just like, maybe you just read and watch movies, but let's go in the Wayback Machine for that moment or moments or songs that just shaped your life, changed your life, and then anything you're currently
Probably
listening
Jeff Buckley's album, Grace,
to. Mm,
really shook me to my core because I didn't know that a white guy could sing with that much feeling
it's an
and
amazing.
sound like a goddamn angel.
Yeah.
And literally I only discovered Jeff Buckley right after his passing
Mm,
and got into that record and was so humbled by his ability to like emote
mm,
in his voice
hmm.
that it almost made me give up music because I was like, if I can't touch on 1/10 of what that guy's bringing, then I better not even do it because the bar for me with hearing that record was so high. The purity of his voice and the emotion, I was just like, wow. Like if I can't touch on 1/10 of that, then I better not even try to do this thing. And then in terms of new bands, I go through phases of not listening to music. I did not listen to music for a good decade almost. But honestly, having kids and a family, I didn't really have a choice at the end of the day. They were just adamant. My kids all have music running through their bones. They're singing all day long, all three of them stemming the same little clip over and over, driving me bananas. But during the pandemic, I really had a moment with Remy Wolf and Bakar.
Mm.
Those two artists and albums during the pandemic were really got me kind of re-inspired in music. Um, I really love that Olivia Dean record.
Mm.
Um, I had sort of come to know her last year before she broke and was I've had this thing the last year or two where I become obsessed like Lola Lola Young, is it Lola
Mhm.
Young?
I believe so. Yep.
I had seen a clip of her 2 years ago, was obsessed, saved her as one artist on Spotify. And then 2 years later, it was like messy and she's huge. Same thing with Olivia Dean, same thing with Remy Wolf. But I love Olivia Dean. I love the weird sort of like 70s chill soul, vibe to it. But I love her story and I love her perseverance. And there's something I feel like that record resonates with people because it just has just a humanity to it that I think people in this AI age are just consciously or unconsciously really, really hungry for.
I appreciate that. And those would be The Art of Loving or then Messy by Olivia Dean for folks that are going to watch this. And then for sure, obviously, your entire catalog is worth it for people that maybe haven't yet. My goodness, please start listening to Fitz and the Tantrums and then go see them January 29th. Last question. You put out the Radio Baby single, if you will, in October. Does that mean there's a seventh Fitz in the Tantrum album? Not to put you, I mean, Man on the Moon, July of 2025. I know these are a long time in the works, but you strike me as the type that's not stopping writing, creating. Where are you at as far as next album, or what would you like to do? Anything
Yeah,
coming up?
I mean, I just did like 5 albums. I did the 3 band records and 2 solo records.
Mhm.
Um, I kind of go through phases where I will write for a year and a half straight and write 100 songs to get to an album. I haven't done that in the last 2 records just because I couldn't emotionally get there to do that much output.
Sure.
And I just feel like the music business has changed so much. Like I'm not chasing a hit song anymore because I don't think anybody knows what the hell a hit song is anymore, and you can't define it. And radio certainly isn't getting to tell you what that is. People are
Mhm.
deciding, and the algo is deciding. So
Mhm.
I've been a little more judicious in terms of how many songs I'll write for a record, but I tend to sort of go through these hibernation periods where after a heavy amount of output, I might take literally a year off. And I'm like 7, 8 months into like not writing a single stitch of music. Um, so I can feel a little bit of like uneasiness where
Yeah.
I know, oh, like I'm gonna have to start doing something if I'm gonna want to feel mentally right soon. So I think I'll start probably exploring that sometime soon. But for me, I'm like, I want to just keep promoting this record. I'm so proud of it. I feel like it's so hard to get people's attention span these days
Yep.
more than ever. I'm watching Lizzo be like, I just released a record. I have 3 million followers. I post something and nobody sees it. I mean, it's just so, and I'm like, okay, I don't feel so bad because if Lizzo's saying that she feels like her last album was hard to get noticed and our albums came out similar times, I'm like, okay. I'm like, it's not just me. It's just the state of the world.
Well,
I
we
want
need
to
people.
keep going and
Yeah.
promoting the record,
Yeah. Well, we need people to do like your kids and mine. My kids are 13, 11, and 7. They need to start grabbing Fits in the Tantrum sounds and use them on all their TikToks, right? Like, let's inject the algorithm, overload the algorithm with Fits in the Tantrums, because
Yeah.
that it's just what a trip. I mean, I was just thinking about just the journey for you as a band and just as how we consume music. I'm an older millennial, so I like tangibility. So I've had Fits in the Tantrum CDs, but it is interesting that like some of your maybe newest fans are finding you through sounds on like a TikTok video. That's just what a trip. Like,
Oh, I
and
mean,
I'm,
we've Out of My League has gone viral
yeah,
2, 3 times. It was one of the first viral audio clips on TikTok when it was just audio trending. And then last year or 2 years ago, it was like all of a sudden this weird trend where a couple would like bump into each other on a corner, look at each other, and then make out.
yep,
But then all of a sudden it was like Justin Timberlake and Jimmy Fallon were doing the bid, and Amy Poehler and her Parks and Recs
Yeah.
Severance actor dude, Adam Scott or whatever
Yep.
his name is,
Yep.
doing it, and it was Gigi Hadid was doing, or whatever I don't even keep up with those people, but everybody was like, "Do you see what's happening?" And then all of a sudden, the song was streaming 1 million a day, and
Wow.
that song just hit over 1 billion songs, 1 billion streams, and we go out and play, and now all of a sudden there's this whole new youthful audience that's coming to our shows, but in very Gen Alpha fashion.
Yep.
We played a show outside of Pittsburgh last summer or 2 summers ago. We played the song. These kids were losing their minds, these teeny boppers, but then they literally started chanting, "Play it again." Play, and they literally did not stop for like 10. And I just heard, who was it? Felix, the rapper guy. He went out
Yeah.
and did the same song like 4 times in a row.
Jeez.
Because that's what these kids want. And I mean, and this is where I felt like a real old guy. Like they were chanting, and then finally I was like, "Kids, that's not the way this works." And I was like, "Oh, I just unked myself."
But you know what? Some of that is just concert etiquette, right? And like they need to I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Well, there was that trend too where people were just starting to throw stuff at
Uh-huh.
people.
Yeah.
And that show, somebody threw something and it hit Noelle, and you do not want to make that lady mad.
Yeah.
She chicken necked them right on stage.
Well, I can promise that people will be on their best behavior next week, January 29th, Riverside Casino. Limited tickets, Riverside Casino and Resort.com. Fitz, it's been a pleasure. I was on the radio playing Money Grabber back in the day, and I love all that you guys have done. Admittedly, this will be my first time seeing you live, and I'll have at least 2 of my 3 kids with me, which will be a
They're
great
going to have a great time.
experience for them. So thank you so much for the time. Keep up the great work. Safe travels. Dress warm. It's very cold here. I don't know where you're at, but Iowa is cold.
I know.
Okay. So we'll see you next week, January 29th, Riverside Casino. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Doug.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.